Okay. Yeah, good evening, everyone. I pray that all of you are doing well. I'm Dr. Mohammed Zainal, Acting Dean at the College of Business Administration at Kuwait University. Since the occurrence of COVID-19, we at the CBA have tried to turn every possible stone to enhance our capabilities in adjusting remotely. In the same way, we try to turn every possible problem into an opportunity. We try to bridge the gaps in research and now in our academic skills, putting KU and our students as our prime goal. Thankfully, we have come a long way after we first started our trials early June. So far, both the faculty members and students have transitioned smoothly into remote learning. However, since the concept is relatively new, the Center of Excellence in Management, which I'm chairing, approached Northeastern University for yet another collaboration in order to present to us specialized webinars in remote learning. These webinars do not focus on using specific apps or platforms, but in fact are aimed on how to make remote learning a success with the right tools and methods. This initiative comes from the Capacity Building Unit at the Center of Excellence in Management, which targets both faculty members and students. I would now like to welcome our presenter for today, Jacob Cragg, who will present the first webinar titled Transitioning to Online Teaching. Jacob is the head of the Instructional Design Group at Northeastern University DeMoore-McKim School of Business. This unique division focuses on training and supporting the entire rank of professors at the MSB on educational digital convergence. They focus on developing and delivering technology-enhanced student-centered academic circular, professional learning communities, the PLCs, project and evidence-based learning. Also, I would like to express my genuine appreciation to all of my colleagues. In fact, I'm very proud to see many of my own old professors among us today. I extend the appreciation to the rest of the attendees who turned up in such a short notice. Lastly, and before I ask Jacob to start, I will go over the rules. We are going to have 45 to 50 minutes of presentation, so I ask you to mute your mics and turn off your cameras unless you have a question later. Then we will open the stage for questions typed or live in the Q&A session, after which we'll have a short survey to be filled before you leave. Thank you all, and over to you, Jacob.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks, Mohammed. If you could make me a presenter so I can share my screen.
I'm sorry, just a second.
So it's great to see everyone here. As Mohammed mentioned, my name is Jacob Cragg. I manage the instructional design group at the DeMoore-McKim School of Business at Northeastern University. So let me share my screen here. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. So this is a webinar on transitioning to online teaching. And to give you a little bit about my background, I have been in education for about a decade now. I have a bachelor's in education, a master's in educational theory, another master's in educational leadership, and I am currently ABD doctoral candidate for my doctorate in higher ed administration. So as I mentioned, I manage the instructional design group at DeMoore-McKim. Northeastern has 9 colleges, and we are the only college at Northeastern, the business school. We are the only college that has a dedicated instructional design group to assist with faculty and staff building courses. And as you can imagine, we've been extremely busy in this time transitioning to remote, online, and now hybrid learning. So I've been at Northeastern for about 2 years, and we've seen a lot of changes with the group. So I just kind of wanted to take the time to outline some of the things that we've been getting from our faculty. We have received, so we have received a lot of feedback about our events, and we host 2 of these per month. So just like this webinar right now, our group hosts 2 of these and we support about 400, just over 400 faculty and staff. Okay, so this is a brief overview. I'll cover the elements of online teaching, the 4 main elements that you can go back to anytime that you're searching consistency in your online delivery. I will talk about online teaching delivery methods and the tools that we use. I will be providing Microsoft Teams main tools, but we use several different tools.
Jacob?
Yes.
Your voice is chopping a little bit. I mean,
is it an echo?
No. It's just your own voice is fading out.
Okay, I apologize.
Yeah.
Is it good now?
Yes.
Okay. Let me know if it happens again. This is all about online teaching and remote learning. I mean, this kind of stuff happens from time to time, and of course, it would happen right in the middle of a webinar. Everything will be just fine until you go to present something. But it's the same thing with teaching. Being prepared. Yeah. So project and evidence-based learning, we'll be covering that. One of the cornerstones of DeMoore McKim and our mission is teaching students toward digital convergence, the idea that all of these physical and remote spaces are converging into one. Universal design for learning, so that's all about your course design, building professional learning communities, and then what we have done, so since I've been manager of the group for about 2 years now, the innovative strategies that we have put into play that have been successful. So first and foremost, these are kind of the pillars of online teaching, the elements, if you will, of really all teaching, whether that's traditional, hybrid, or online. But I think it will be, it is more purposeful in online teaching to go back to these 4 main elements, because in a traditional or a face-to-face learning environment, these things happen naturally. So if you're a faculty member, you're giving the content, you're doing the instruction, you have students take a test, and then you provide them feedback. It's very natural. Where in an online environment, I think that you have to be a little more purposeful with the delivery of these elements. So, and I'll rely on Paul Bolster to, in his webinar on Thursday, to give more of a faculty perspective with these. But from my group, and we support 400 faculty and staff at DeMoore McKim. What do we mean by these things? So content, those are your course materials. So your textbook, your articles, your videos, those sorts of things that you want students you want to give to students, and you want them to consume that content and then come prepared for class. Okay, in an online teaching environment, it's going to be the same way. You can post that content on Microsoft Teams. You can share your PowerPoints. You can share articles for students to review. You can share videos. So that is the content part of online teaching. The instruction, that comes from you, just like the face-to-face. That comes from you, the faculty members, and what you want students to fill the gaps. So you've given them the content, now fill the gaps with your instruction. And what do you want them to do with that content, right? Like what is your outcome there to, so give them some instruction on what to do with the content, fill in the gaps in the literature and the course materials. And then you want to assess what they're learning, right? The assessment piece is a very important piece, and a lot of my research focuses almost exclusively on the assessment piece of this model. And so that's how you are determining whether students succeeded in putting together the content and instruction that you gave them. And so the assessment piece can be both informal and formal. Again, in an in-person environment, in a face-to-face environment, you may be getting a lot of informal assessment because students are participating in discussions, right? And so you're informally assessing them. Okay, they are ready and they are prepared for the test, maybe, or for the project. And so the assessment piece is very important. And last but not least, we have feedback. And that is you're going to provide students feedback on how they did in the assessment. And this is cyclical, right? So we start with content, provide the instruction, we give an assessment, then we give feedback. We give students the opportunity to learn from their mistakes and apply those to other assessments down the road. So online teaching delivery, I can tell you a little bit about what we have gone through at DeMoore McKim since the outbreak of COVID-19. So we were largely a traditional college. We did have some hybrid and online learning opportunities, but we were largely traditional. And then in March, we went to remote learning, emergency remote learning. So this was, I wanted to highlight the differences between remote and online as far as we are considered. So we went to remote learning to finish out the spring semester. And then in the summer, for summer 1 and summer 2, we transitioned to online learning. Okay, and so the difference between remote and online typically is that remote learning is heavy synchronous learning. Like we have meetings on Microsoft Teams, we have meetings on Zoom at our normal class time, and then we sprinkle in asynchronous stuff along the way in our Blackboard, in our Microsoft Team, in our Canvas, where online at D'Amour McKim is primarily asynchronous, meaning the students can complete the assignments as they see fit within a certain guideline, and then we sprinkle in synchronous sessions along the way, maybe meet live once a week or something like that. And so I will let Paul on Thursday explain more the differences and the experiences that we have had at Northeastern with our online asynchronous programs. But it seems like this is more of a remote situation where we're going to be giving synchronous sessions online and providing asynchronous materials. And I can tell you a little bit about the hybrid opportunities that Northeastern will be offering in the fall. We are calling it New Flex, NU Flex, meaning that both students and faculty will have the flexibility to be in person or online at the same time. And so it will be primarily synchronous learning. Now, I would not say that when transitioning from traditional face-to-face learning to an online course or remote learning, I don't think that it's more work for an online course. It's just a shift in preparation of those materials and that work. And Paul on Thursday will probably speak a lot to this, but you have to prepare your course ahead of time. It's less of a fluid situation, like, again, going back to purposeful creation of your course. You have to think more of it on the front end instead of maybe throughout the semester as you go. Obviously, you can still make changes as you go throughout the semester, but it will require some more preparation ahead of time. To just define asynchronous versus synchronous, asynchronous learning is non-simultaneous. So this is self-paced learning. Good examples are modules, pre-recorded lectures. We would recommend, 5 to 10 minutes of a pre-recorded lecture, maybe a little longer. If you have an hour or an hour and a half, if you have a lengthy lecture, you can actually chop it up into smaller pieces if you wish. And so that's pre-recorded. That's not a live session. That's a recording of a lecture. And also virtual discussion. You can have students participate in discussion boards on Blackboard. Microsoft Teams is great for asynchronous discussion. Students can participate in the given channels. They can participate via chat. And so Microsoft Teams is a great example for virtual discussion. So that's asynchronous learning. Synchronous learning is what we are doing right now. So this is simultaneous, real-time learning. So it's great for live lectures, office hours with your students, live discussions, and student presentations. This is great for student presentations like this presentation I'm giving right now. A big crossroads that we ran into this summer is that synchronous learning can be made asynchronous. So what is happening right now? We are recording this synchronous learning opportunity and making it asynchronous for the people who could not attend and can go back and watch it later. So some very brief, quick tips on asynchronous versus synchronous. Again, I think in talks with Mohammed, I think in your situation, it's going to be a combination of both asynchronous and synchronous learning, which is exactly what we are doing right now. We have synchronous live sessions using Microsoft Teams or Zoom, and then we have asynchronous activities, projects, presentations, course studies, discussions, those sorts of things. But some real quick tips. I'm going to go more in depth on project-based learning. That was a common question that we got. What do we think about alternative assessments to online quizzes or online tests? We can create some projects to replace those potentially. Being super transparent with your grading. So as you grade these projects, make sure students are informed with that feedback piece. Make sure that you're kind of going out of your way to provide them feedback on how they are doing on those assessments. Consistent course design. I can tell you that in our online course design, we do it by week. So we have a week 1 module, a week 2 module, a week 3 module. So it's consistent and students can go through the course, progress through the course chronologically. So we would recommend something like that. It definitely doesn't have to be by week. If you want to do it topic 1, topic 2, topic 3, or we just have some that do it by class, class 1, class 2, class 3, whatever makes sense to you and works best for you. You all are the faculty and know what's best for you. So having some sort of chronological design. So having some sort of chronological design through your course, or just designing it in a consistent way, whatever you think is best, is absolutely what we would recommend. And then being present. So it's really easy in a traditional or face-to-face environment to be present in your class, because you show up to class and you stand up in front of everyone and you teach. And so you want to be present in an online environment too, whether synchronous or asynchronous. Digital formative assessments, that's what a lot of my research is based on. Faculty face a lot of barriers. These take time to build. And what I mean by digital formative assessments, these are small, just learning opportunities for students, maybe 3 or 5 questions, these discussion boards, these low stakes opportunities that I can participate in the class and you can give me feedback on how I'm doing. You can automate that feedback. You can allow for students to reflect on their learning. So there's several different things that you can do there. And some advice I would give you in transitioning to online is when choosing the tools for teaching and learning, don't overcommit. Don't choose 5, 6, 8 different tools out of the gates. Just choose 1 or 2 that work for you, and then learn those and then add more as you go. It really seems like Microsoft Teams is going to be a valuable tool for all of you as faculty. And so I would start there and then build out. So these are some examples of tools that we have at Northeastern. You see Microsoft Teams is one of those tools that we create student groups out of, we create classes out of, and then we incorporate those into our LMS, which historically for many years has been Blackboard. So Blackboard has been our LMS where we have posted all of our student work and assignments and grades. And now we have transitioned, and beginning in the fall, to Canvas. So we had a really good transition, and faculty have responded very well in that transition from Blackboard to Canvas. But there are things to like about both of them, and you can use both Teams and the LMS, Blackboard or Canvas, together. So Microsoft Teams, again, would be a tool that I would recommend in building PLCs, in providing discussion opportunities for your students, to keep them up to date with what's going on in class, and also the synchronous aspect too, having these online live meetings with students. Articulate Rise is a software that we have a license for that builds modules. I told you about that module design. Articulate Rise builds modules. And so there is a free 60-day trial for that license, but that's one of our favorites to build. Poll Everywhere is a great way to just survey your students on what they're thinking and how the class is going, those sorts of things. We received several questions about academic integrity. For our online exams, we use a tool called Respondus. We support a tool called Respondus. It will build online quizzes. It will allow for a lockdown browser where students cannot leave the exam. And it also has a monitoring aspect to it if you want, that uses AI software to proctor the exam. But you can build these exams to where you don't need as much online proctoring. And some recommendations there would be to make them long form or essay type questions rather than all multiple choice. We have a lot of faculty who have students submit essays in online quizzes or lengthy answers, and also setting up pools of questions in online quizzes. You can set up, we have some faculty who maybe they have a 25 question tests. They actually create 100 questions and then mix and match so students get different questions. Now, a lot of trust, we're going to have to trust our students during this time, but there are ways to make the tests more academic integrity friendly. And last but not least, we have Panopto, and that is just a lecture capture tool. So if you want to record your lectures, you can do that in Panopto, but you can also do that in Teams. Like we're doing right now, you can record your session in Teams, and then that goes to Microsoft Stream. So that's just a little bit about the tools that we support. And again, I will discuss these more as I continue forward. So project-based learning, a lot of my research back when I was a teacher was on project-based learning. And that's the idea that we give students, this is a good way, one of the questions was alternative evaluations to test. Okay, project-based learning is a great way, and we've had a lot of faculty at DeMoore McKim who had, maybe they used to give 4 or 5 tests per semester. They've cut it down to 1 or 2 tests and then filled in the others with projects, essays, case studies, those sorts of things. So I wanted to just explain a little bit about project-based learning. This is real-world solutions, questions, challenges, problems that people are facing, and letting the students dive deep into these questions, trying to find these in-depth solutions. So it is a change in approach from traditional learning. So a traditional classroom would go, you would present the knowledge and learning, right, the content and the instruction. Then you would present the problem, which would typically be the assessment, and then you would give them the solutions, or they would give you the solutions, and then you would provide feedback. So a traditional approach would go knowledge and learning, problem, solution. In problem-based or project-based learning, it would go problem. You would give students the problem first, and then they would work and you would facilitate their learning about the problem, and then we would move on to solutions. So it's just switching those first two to where students are presented with the problem first, and then kind of working backward to the content and learning. So some good strategies that I really like that I used as a teacher. Jigsaw is a perfect example. That's where you can make groups of students, like in Microsoft Teams. You could create groups of students, and then you could provide them each with a specific problem that they are to come up with a solution for. So for example, at the business school, we have supply chain as one of our departments. We've had some problems with COVID-19 and the supply chain. And so giving them experience, like actual real world problems in supply chain, and then breaking them up into groups is great. They can develop solutions, and then we come all back together, and as we put the puzzle pieces together, right? And we all come back, and then we all present on each other's learning. And so they become miniature experts in these little problems or these small fields, and then they teach the class on their discoveries. And then you facilitate that learning. You say, we could have talked more about this, or don't forget about this, or you could give them feedback. Maybe they do a fantastic job. So it makes you more of the facilitator of learning. Blank slate is one of my absolute favorites. It's where I have the students design the assessment. Now it has to meet my expectations as the faculty member, right? But I had some of the really neatest, coolest projects come out of this project design, where I let the students develop their own assessment. Okay, here is the problem. What do you want to do to prove to me that you learned? And so again, sometimes what they would come up with was not good enough, and I would have to tell them, that does not meet my standards for assessment. But seeing some of the hands-on projects, I've had students that would build entire websites to address problems, build apps on their phone. I mean, we got really in depth, and it was stuff that if I would have told them, hey, make a presentation on it, they would have all made presentations. But if I say, hey, come up with your assessment, I came up with like podcasts and a lot of different things that were beyond the scope of a presentation. So, and then menu is the last strategy that I would mention, and that's giving students options. Like if you have a menu at a restaurant, you have options with food to select. That's the same thing too. So maybe for assessment, you give students 3 different options. They can do a podcast, they can do a presentation, or they can do an essay, whatever the case may be. You give them options to decide how they are going to show that they learned. And then evidence-based teaching, that's really important in the time of the pandemic right now, because we can actually gain analytics on Microsoft Teams, Blackboard, Canvas, with how students are interacting with our materials. And so if you notice that students are not interacting with certain areas, then maybe that's a space that you can revise. And we are constantly surveying our students, asking them about their experiences in the courses. So they have so you can use that data to inform your teaching. If students said they liked this, they didn't like this, or if students are going and watching all of these videos, but they're not watching this one video, why is that? And so you can use evidence to support your teaching. Now, digital convergence, again, is one of the cornerstones of our mission at DeMoore McKim, and digital convergence is the integration of physical, digital, and human resources, resulting in a consolidated, as I mentioned before, digital and physical ecosystems. I mentioned that we are going to be in a high flex model called NUFlex in the fall. And that is a prime example of this consolidation of digital and physical ecosystems. We will have some students and faculty in person. We will have some students and faculty online. And so it's a good representation of a convergence there of those ecosystems. So what can we do to, improve on our students' learning in our teaching of digital convergence? And the one thing that I could say is like utilizing the tools in teaching that students are going to use in the modern world. And I couldn't say that there's a better tool than Microsoft Teams. We are seeing a lot of companies right now, a lot of corporations in the pandemic that are opting to use Microsoft Teams at their businesses. And so, us as a school of business, what better tool to share with our students to have them use in their classes to learn about, when they get out into the workforce and have a job, that's a tool that they are going to use as well. So another example includes infographics. When I got to Northeastern 2 years ago, I realized that many of our students did not know how to present data because faculty were telling me that, hey, like my students, they're doing great on the test, but when it comes time for presentation of data, they're struggling. Like, what can we do? And so what I had my students do in my teaching is create infographics. That was a skill that they had to pick up. And I just put PictoChart in there. That was the tool that we used for building infographics. And it's just a one-pager. So if students do all of this research, how do they explain it, right? How do they disseminate that to their stakeholders like they would do when they get a job? So I have to provide my boss. I sit under the Senior Associate Dean of Faculty and Research. I have to present him with my research and my findings, and I don't want to do that in a 40-page report. I want to do that in a maybe a one-pager or a two-pager, a brief report of data visualization that shows that I learned all this stuff in my research, and I can quickly show him in an infographic. So infographics are fantastic data visualization opportunities, but also we are focusing on skill building with content. Okay, so I think in the classroom historically that content has led, but now we're focusing more on building skills with the content. So obviously the content is very important, and we still want to provide that business content, but how can we build students' skills with the content? Because they may or may not use the content in the workforce, but they can absolutely use those skills in the workforce. And one of those main skills that we're focusing on is comfort with ambiguity. My job as head of the instructional design group at DeMoore McKim is nothing but ambiguous. Technology is changing every day. There's no rule book or guidebook for how I am to manage the group. So I have to be comfortable with ambiguity and knowing that things are changing and that there may be 5 different answers to the same problem. And so I have to be comfortable with that. That's a skill that I have to build on, that I can showcase for my team and my employees. And so that's the same skill that we can focus on with our students. Teamwork is another one. Microsoft Teams, again, in a virtual world, we're going to be working more on virtual teams, global teams. And so teamwork is going to be highlighted in the modern workforce. Self-efficacy, how do students see their own skills? Like, what about their confidence? That is something that is not easy to build. So how can we help students build on their confidence and their beliefs about how they think and how they're doing in the courses as well, and then also like their confidence in applying that. Again, as I said before, there's no rule book for what I do, and I have to be comfortable and confident in my skills to make suggestions and changes and these sorts of things. And then sometimes they go great and sometimes they don't. And then I reflect on that and I make changes moving forward. And lastly, resiliency. So I'm a part of a research cluster group this fall that we are going to measure student resiliency in this time. And so that's another skill that we can pick up in the transition to online learning. How resilient are our students? Are they good at working independently? Do they work better with teamwork? Is this online learning, is this something they excel at, or is it something they just cannot do? So looking at those skills, and Northeastern has something called SAIL, SAIL.northeastern.edu. It's self-authored integrated learning. And what that tool is, it's Northeastern owned, but what it is, it captures all of these skills that students are learning. So if I take Paul's class, Paul can highlight and say, Jacob should have learned these 5 things in these 5 skills in my course. And then after 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, students can go back and look at all the skills that they gathered in those courses. So UDL, Universal Design for Learning. If you go back to these 3 principles when designing your online course, I think that you will have success. The first one is representation. So the presentation of your content and instruction should be different. It shouldn't just be the same for everyone. One of the main questions that we got was, what about students with special needs or learning disabilities? And so representation of your content and instruction are great ways to deal with those in the classroom. And so some things that we do for accessibility, our videos are captioned for students using the tool Panopto. I think Microsoft Teams has captioning ability as well. So we capture our learning opportunities. We give students additional time. If you use an LMS like Blackboard or Canvas, and let's say that you've built an online quiz and you want students to take it in an hour, but a student with special needs needs a little longer, you can give that student individually an hour and a half to complete it instead of the standard hour. So there are a few different ways, but it's the presentation of your content and instruction and seeing what students that you have in the classroom and how they best learn and what's best for them. And if you have to present your content and instruction in 2 or 3 different ways to achieve that, then that's something you can absolutely do. And again, transparency of your presentation and your assessment and those sorts of things. We would absolutely not recommend hiding things from students or anything like that. So we make things, everything's out in the open for students to see on a weekly or 2 weeks at a time, so they can see everything that they expect. So a lot of that is highlighted in the syllabus as well. The next principle is action and expression. Again, differentiation is going to be the key here. So allowing students different ways to submit assignments. So some people in my classes were better essay writers, and so they would have preferred writing an essay. And then some say, I really need help with my writing. Can you help me do this while I create a presentation? And so they would create a presentation for their project, and then I would help them on the side with their writing so that became stronger. And so having different modes for action and expression, so letting students share what they know about the topic in a way that makes most sense to them, and also meets your standards, right? It isn't a system that we just let students do whatever they want, but it is a system that we all know that students all learn differently, and so how can we differentiate those assignments? And then being flexible, I think that that's the key. I mean, we're going to have things that go wrong. I don't think that any of us would expect to walk in a classroom and it would just be perfect. Like the whole class went perfect, all hour or 2 hours of class. I didn't, nothing went wrong. Rarely do we have those moments. And so being flexible, like at the beginning of this webinar where Teams was acting a little strange when I went to present, I backed out and I went right back into it. And then my audio was off a little bit. And so you have to be flexible and know that those things are going to happen, and that's okay. And being flexible with students as well when they have issues with internet or access, being flexible and understanding when they email you and say, hey, can I turn this in tomorrow? My internet's down, or whatever the case may be. Just having those considerations in your course design, especially right now, that flexibility is important. And then means of engagement. How are you going to stimulate an interest and motivate them? One of the questions we got was on encouraging participation in an online environment. And that's just making it interesting, using the tools. And I don't think that students would expect everyone to be experts in Microsoft Teams, but that's a tool that you could utilize to stimulate interest and motivation in your online course. Just by putting things there that students can interact with, they can stay engaged, that it's not general in nature, that it's specific. So if I had one tip for encouraging participation the most, it is being specific about what learning is taking place. And I can give you an example of what not to do. Is some faculty just say, read this article and then summarize it and then tell one of your peers about it. Well, so in those experiences right now, if a student is doing that in 4 or 5 different classes, they're not going to be engaged with that so much. So you can ask them specific questions about the article. You can ask them to apply what they learned in the article and share with one of their friends. So there are a few different ways you can do to keep students motivated, engaged, and interested. And it involves digging deeper into the topic rather than just a general knowledge or synthesis. Professional learning communities. So these are groups of faculty sharing content, lesson plans, recorded instruction, assessments, successful strategies. We've had several of these built since March, since we went remote, and they have worked out great. So faculty have actually created Microsoft Teams team, and they share their PowerPoints, they share the content, they share, hey, this went really well in my class today. Hey, this didn't go well in my class today. And so having those available where faculty can share ideas is great. When I was a teacher, every semester we had one common assessment. So in our whole department, we all gave this one assessment, all of us did. And it was a way to see how students are learning across an entire department, but that is something you can do. That's called a common assessment. You can share that with your community, and then everybody can give the same assessment if you want. And this can be by group, meaning like supply chain could have a PLC, or even more specific, like an intro to business course could have. We run 30 sections or so of intro to business. That group, that cohort of faculty share a lot of materials. Or it could just be by college. And maybe you have, for example, we have a DeMoore McKim faculty and staff Microsoft team, and we have it divided out into channels by topic. And then we share information that we have on those certain topics. So these online teaching tips and these, that's a channel on our Microsoft team that I regularly post to. You can virtually participate, as I mentioned, through Microsoft Teams. We do have some PLCs in Blackboard and Canvas, but I would say that Microsoft Teams is the primary tool for building that learning community. And an important thing that we're running into is you want to make sure to establish community guidelines. So if you're sharing presentations, lectures, strategies, if you're sharing personal information from your courses, you want to make sure that the community that you're engaging in has some sort of guidelines, so people aren't, using those at other institutions unless you want them to, right? So our faculty, want it to stay within Northeastern, and so we have specific guidelines for dealing with those with each community. All right, and so as I'm winding down here, I will just tell you a little bit about our strategy for how we have dealt with academic technology and the things that we are currently doing right now to deal with the significant increase of development, design, and support that our group is doing for DeMoore McKim. So professional development sessions, I think I mentioned at the beginning, we host 2 webinars per month. We call them Lunch and Learns, so we have them at noon. So the idea is when we were in the office, when we were face to face, we would buy everybody lunch and we would say, hey, come on up and learn about Microsoft Teams. And that would be, or learn about online teaching. And so we would buy them lunch and they would all come in person. Now that we are all remote, we are having those as webinars. So the idea is, brown bag your lunch from your kitchen and bring it to the professional development, and we give a session. So we record all of our webinars to be viewed asynchronously, just like this, after the fact. And we also create short videos for faculty to watch. So if we get any questions about Microsoft Teams, like, hey, Jacob, how do I create a channel in Microsoft Teams? Then I can record a quick video, a screen share of me creating a channel in Microsoft Teams, and I can send that to faculty to watch. Design services. So we have consultations with faculty on their design. Our faculty are really great at designing their own courses, which is fantastic because they have the tools and support available to them. But sometimes they just want to know, hey, how am I doing? What do you think about this? And we're happy to give consultations. I mean, obviously, with academic freedom and the faculty being the leaders in the classroom, it's absolutely their courses, but we do get some requests for consultation. And we also develop course materials. So going back to those online quizzes, so we can build online quizzes for our faculty. And we've had a lot of faculty adopt online quizzes this summer. And we have been using those, deploying those in either Blackboard or Canvas. And then some faculty choose to have the proctoring, some do not. But you can, through Blackboard or Canvas, you can deploy those quizzes. If you just wanted students to submit a file like a Microsoft Word or something like that as a quiz, you could do that through Teams. And there are some different assessment options through Teams as well. But we developed some of those course materials. And last but not least, the academic technology support. So all of these tools that we are now supporting, the online teaching, the pedagogy, right, is all under our department. And so we provide the technical troubleshooting if it has to do with teaching and learning. And, we have a lot of faculty who say, hey, Jacob, I need help with this. Can you help? And we're a team typically ranging from 5 to 7. We have 5 right now. We'll have 7 in the fall. And so I try to provide resources for faculty to have those just-in-time meetings with both faculty and staff. And another realization that we had, and talk about an innovative strategy, and a realization we had is that we had a lot of staff that were supporting faculty. And so now we've kind of taken on those staff members and we've begun supporting them. So we have created learning opportunities in Microsoft Teams and in Canvas. So we're talking like an MBA orientation or something like that. We've created some sort of orientation material with staff for faculty to present either in Microsoft Teams or Canvas to prepare students for a program or a course. We have some accounting, what we call boot camps, where they take this short 1-2 week course in Canvas before their accounting course. So we have those types of opportunities as well. So we have encouraged staff to also attend our events because there are many staff that do support both faculty and students. I just wanted to show you a quick chart. This is our data as of this morning, what we have done, the instructional design group has done in terms of support. And you can see that last year, we were already, before COVID-19, we were already experiencing significant growth with online teaching. More and more people were going to online teaching last year. And of course, this year, those support numbers have already doubled, and we're only halfway through the year. So it's something you have to be prepared for, because if you make the transition to online, you have to realize that the support is going to go through the roof. But I'm very encouraged by faculty using technology for teaching and learning. I love my job. I love what I do. I'm very passionate about this. And so it's very encouraging seeing other schools adopt models for online teaching. It's obviously, COVID-19, it's a shame that it's because of that we're having to move to this. But hopefully that resiliency piece, with all of us learning more technology through this, we will be more resilient out the other end, and we'll be able to offer new opportunities for our students. But I hope that answered a lot of the questions that you might have had about transitioning to online learning and what we have done as the instructional design group at DeMoore McKim. Again, I would let Paul dig more into the specifics of faculty and the faculty experience on Thursday. But that's really all I have, and I appreciate you having me. And Mohammed, I'll turn it back to you for questions.
Well, thank you, Jacob. Thank you. Is there any question that you guys have? I have, of course, a couple of questions, but I'd love to that you start. Can you raise your hand if anyone? Dr. Saad Al-Ajmi, شلونك? Yeah, go ahead, Doctor. Can you unmute yourself, Dr. Saad? Can you unmute? Can you unmute yourself, Dr. Saad?
Just did.
Yes, yes.
Hi, Jacob. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jacob. My question is actually very personal and psychological. I mean, like, how on earth am I going to physically, psychologically, and mentally adapt to talking to a machine, having been, standing before my own students for the past 35 years or so, and getting adapted and adjusted to this sort of new mode of thinking. And I've done a few sessions of revision, and I still don't get it. It's not sinking in. Is there a sort of a psychological sort of preparation for this new approach to do?
Absolutely. That's a great question, and something that I think a lot of faculty are dealing with right now. It is very different. And I can share what many of our faculty have been doing to kind of overcome that very thing. And it's to have practice sessions with other people. So like have practice students and getting in there and running through the sessions. And in fact, our faculty have reported that they have felt more comfortable after running through it several times with the live sessions and getting feedback like this didn't work, this did work. But absolutely, yeah, I think that there are, and we will have a lot of interesting studies come out of this about the psychology of dealing with it. But our faculty that have been dealing with it well have just set up those recurring events to be in front of a class until it really settles in. Hope that answers.
I assume that the problem is only faced by veteran academics like me, but unlike people of you, member of the digital age,
Yeah, I think there's something to say though about like actual human contact though, right? And so what we have done to avoid that from the staff and faculty perspective, we had these networking events that were in person. We would all just get together and we'd meet up once a month just to talk and say, hey, what project are you working on? What project are you working? And it was the human contact. And we have kept those going, and we've been hosting those virtually instead of just getting rid of them and saying we're not in person. We've been hosting those virtually so the people that need that contact with other people can still have those moments.
Thank you.
you. And to put some more salt on the wound, we have some cultural issue here by not being able to see our students. Like less than 5% they turn on their cameras, whether it's legal or cultural, I don't know, but that's one of the obstacles that we have, having only 1 out of 10 or something.
Yeah, and building that with the discussions is tough.
I think someone just turned, yes, I'm sorry. So, anyone else with a question? Dr. Akram? Unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi, good evening for everyone. Thank you, Jacob, for the nice presentation. And I would like to thank Dr. Znail for organizing this. And just one question. Actually, after being adapted to this system, how we can go back to normal? I mean, I love the system, you know. I can do a lot of work from home. But now after we started this and we are going according to the new calendar, maybe for a year, and especially we are a clinician, we are going to the clinic. And now we are preventing our students to go because they might get the virus. But I found the system's great. So now how you can wean me to go back to the, which I like, to the class, how I can go back to the class?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, and I'm glad to hear the feedback that your experience is going very well. And so I think we will make it, as I can just speak what we're doing at Northeastern, but you know, I think we will have more hybrid and online opportunities after this for the faculty and the students that benefit from this. So our grad school before COVID went totally hybrid. So we would have 2 hours a week in person and then 30 minutes online per week. So you kind of get the best of both worlds in that situation. So that's what we're doing, is transitioning to hybrid. But you can absolutely use Microsoft Teams, for example, in a traditional face-to-face course. So if you go back to being in the classroom, you can still use that system for delivering your materials. Our students, even our faculty that are going back in the classroom, they're going to have students submit their projects and essays online. No more of taking up paper copies of everything. They're still going to have the students submit that way. So you can take the elements that you like that have really worked well and apply those back to traditional learning if that's what we go back to.
Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me see if someone else question. Feels like we're having almost 90 attendees, so I need to go. Okay, I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind. Okay, now, is there any alternative to the assessment procedure? I mean, if we can't go with because based on our rules and regulations right now, we can go for a face-to-face final examination with the social distancing. Mm-hmm. Just in case if things didn't work out the same way that we want by end of this semester. Is there an alternative of, bear in mind that we're not supposed to use any online proctoring tools. Mm-hmm. So any recommendation on how to overcome this problem?
Yeah, so you can still build online quizzes and exams. We have many faculty who give their midterms and finals online, and then some choose to proctor and some don't. So it really is up to those individual faculty or individual programs. We have some programs that proctor everything. But so in building an unproctored exam, we do a lot of this. We make it more essay-based or problem-based, where students have different problems where they have to explain more of their essay. You can check for plagiarism, those sorts of things within a quiz. So those would be, the tips that I would give in creating, if you could not transition it to some sort of project. I mean, ideally, we would switch it to a project if we could. If we had a final exam, we could transition to a project. But some faculty like the exams and like the final assessment piece or need the final assessment piece. And so it would just be creating an assessment, preparing. I don't think you can eliminate cheating, right? Like cheating will always exist, right? I think, and so it's impossible to completely eliminate it. You can just, in your design of your quizzes, of your exams, create where it is more difficult to cheat and relies more on the student to explain. I don't know, Paul, would you have a better answer for that or another answer? Oh, you're muted.
Go. Okay, can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, those are good suggestions, Jacob, and a couple of other things. I can talk about this a little bit more on Thursday, but right now, in addition to using projects instead of exams where that's feasible, and using sort of more essay-based responses as opposed to simpler multiple choice responses, you can do things like have multiple versions of an examination. You can use a relatively short examination window so that students that might be tempted to collaborate with one another during say a 2-hour final exam session might just find that that's too expensive in terms of the time that they have to spend co-researching, so to speak. And if their exams are slightly different, then that might, again, these are just small things that one could do to not eliminate, cheating, but maybe to minimize it. Another possibility is, a lot of faculty are worried, well, students will just go online and Google the answer, or they'll just they'll open up their textbooks. Well, another alternative is well, let them do that and design an exam that assumes that they're going to have these resources available. And again, this puts a lot of the burden back on the professor to design more robust exams that perhaps are that take more time to grade. But these are some of the solutions that I can suggest off the top of my head. And again, we can talk a little bit more about some of these design features a little bit later as well. But those are some quick comments from me.
Sure. That still would apply for science-based classes like math. I mean, we're having lots of mathematical terms. I mean, it's not like it can be done through essays, or would you still have the same advice for those kind of?
Yeah, some of the stuff that we are doing. So accounting for us in the School of Business, accounting is one of those departments that's difficult to make things essay-based, right? And so I think what Paul said, the time, giving them the time, so it's a timed exam, giving them different numbers, so you can differentiate the numbers so that they're not just, if they are collaborating, they have different questions, but also incorporating Excel spreadsheets. We have some faculty who give students Excel spreadsheets to fill out as a final, and that is different than others. So it may not be an essay, it may be an Excel spreadsheet or something of that nature. I couldn't speak to the other math and science stuff that's beyond that.
Dr. Abbas Al-Mijran, I think we are having 2 questions. Dr. Abbas, can you unmute yourself, please?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jacob, for the excellent presentation. And also, of course, our thanks and appreciation to Dr. Zainal for all his sincere effort. Actually, he's putting to make through his effort our experience in this new online teaching method that we are using to make it fruitful and easy. Actually, my question is regarding if there is a problem, and cut off of the online connection that we have, is there any possibility of still adding materials offline to the files and to having access to the system in one way or another? And the other question is that, is there a certain capacity where you can load things in the file for certain courses would that be like sent to the cloud saving, or can be found in another storage in the system itself, like especially when it's overwhelmed, or that you have a lot of number of video recorded, for example, and other materials, you know, like textbook and things like that, which is with large amount. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, and those are great questions. So Microsoft Teams, it needs the internet to work. So as far as like, and same with Blackboard or Canvas or any other LMS, but you can use Office offline. So Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, like I just did right there. So you could prepare those materials if you were offline. You just would be unable to share them if you were offline. So you know what I would do if I was finding myself with having an issue with my internet. I could still go on and prepare things and then be ready to present them online. For example, my internet went out yesterday. So I was talking with Paul, my internet went out of all days. I'm glad it happened yesterday and not today, but I could still work on my PowerPoint and then be ready to deliver it online for when that time came. Now, sorry.
No. I'm just worried about the time. So
okay,
that's
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Cloud-based, to answer that question, yes. Like Microsoft Teams is cloud-based, so you can put all those in there, give links to like OneDrive and Stream and those sorts of things, as well as Blackboard and Canvas, so that they're not taking up a bunch of storage on your local computer. Yes, that is cloud-based.
Dr. Sandus Al-Aji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abbas.
Thank you very much.
Yes, hi, good evening. Thank you, Dr. Zainal, for arranging this lovely event, and for Dr. Cragg for sharing your insights and experience. We truly appreciate it. Now, my main concern, I want to pick up on what Dr. Zainal said, because I commiserate Dr. Zainal. We ask the students to turn on the cameras, but there's this cultural sensitivity and they don't want to do it. So I want to ask you, Dr. Cragg, because, you know, at the beginning of this session, you had asked us or requested of us that we turn off for better reception or for a smoother session. So to my mind, it seems the technological capability of what we have in mind, our aspiration for what we want to teach remotely, is not yet there. So I want to ask you personally, Dr. Cragg, if you can share with us, because you do not in the States probably have as much cultural sensitivity about turning on the cameras. If you do turn on cameras for 20, 30 students or whatever, what happens? Does it actually hinder the system, or do you have a smoother experience? Thank you very much.
Oh, great questions, and thank you for that. So yes, we experience both the sensitivity issues with cameras. So some students do not feel comfortable. For example, like right now, some of our students went back home with mom and dad, and they don't have a space that they can share, you know, without dad walking through the background. I think backgrounds like I have here, so this is a Northeastern background, I think those have helped. But we still have some students that are sensitive to showing their spaces on camera. And so we are doing that right now too. So if students don't want to be recorded or share their camera, they don't have to. We encourage it if the faculty want that experience, but we also have the bandwidth issues. So for my webinars that I had, I also do the same thing, where we request everybody turn off their video cameras unless they're talking, because with 100 or more people, you're bound to have bandwidth issues. And it's the same thing in a 20 to 30 person class. In most situations, I think faculty have students turn their videos off until a certain part in the class, maybe an engagement activity where you can break them out into smaller groups and then encourage them to turn their videos on and share there. But yes, we still experience the sensitivity and bandwidth issues. It's just, and we have the same recommendations for bandwidth, but the sensitivity issues can be fixed potentially by backgrounds, you know, or just encouraging people to share.
Thank you. Thank you. My last question before I let Dr. Abdullah Mtawa, the Assistant Vice President of of the online teaching thing. He's with us if he has any thoughts to say. But my question is there any universal platform to be used for the entire university rather than for each college? For example, Canvas could be a good thing for some college, but like Moodle could be another platform that can be used for a different college. Do you recommend going with like a universal platform, or just pick let every school pick its own?
Yeah, so great question. So I have spoken to universities that have done both. So I sit on a university committee that made the decision to move from Blackboard to Canvas, and we made the decision together that we would do it all together. We felt like the universal platform was better outcome for both our students and our faculty, as well as our support. That way we're only supporting one tool versus 3 different tools. And we really found that a lot of the problems that we had with Blackboard were solved with Canvas. Now, it doesn't matter. Blackboard, Canvas, Moodle, whatever LMS you use, they all have their own individual issues. But we have been pleasantly surprised, and faculty feedback on Canvas has been through the roof. And so we would absolutely recommend a universal approach from a centralized perspective. Especially if you could agree on one. And we all agreed that Canvas was better for us than Blackboard and Moodle.
Sure. I think we have one more question. Dr. Abdullah Al-Mutawa, do you have anything to add, or? Anyway, so I'll just check with I think I got just one question before we leave. Maybe, yeah. Dr. Mariam?
Yes, thank you, gentlemen, all for organizing this and for your time. I have a question that has 2 parts. I think like the variability in the standards and in the comfortability of each faculty member with using technology will affect the knowledge retention for students, because the delivery changes from one professor to another. And I heard this from students as I got their feedback, because I started early with mine. And I've noticed that, you know, some students are not feeling that they are getting the material that they should get, you know, from a class, you know, like a regular class versus online. And that depends on really the instructor capability of and how comfortable he is into using technology. So how we can, you know, bridge that gap into, and I totally understand that there are differences between, you know, certain professors and certain subjects, certain, let's say, fields. But all in all, like what I'm concerned at the end of the day is how much students going to learn out of, you know, out of certain delivery. The other one is maybe what I noticed recently talking to some of my colleagues is there is kind of a sensitivity, not among students, but among professors themselves, because everything now is being transparent. So there is this, you know, uncomfortable, you know, environment. You know, people are not really comfortable sharing their content. People, especially when there's a course that, you know, it has shifting professor from one semester into another. So how we can mind this, you know, or fix this culture, I want to say. I do believe this is a global thing. This is not, you know, related to a certain culture or society or a university per se. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And both excellent questions I wrote down here. So I'll address your first one, that about students maybe not receiving full value. I mean, we absolutely have experienced that here in the United States. There have been lawsuits over, you know, students going from traditional to, hey, I didn't sign up for my class to be on Zoom or on Microsoft Teams, and I'm not getting the support materials that I would in person. And so, yeah, we would absolutely encourage faculty to give those materials, but also to be aware that some of the faculty that had trouble in the spring and summer, they tried to recreate their online class to be exactly like their face-to-face class. And we ran into issues with that because it just did not translate as well. So I appreciate your efforts in asking your students for feedback and what they think of the class. I think that's important to do more so in an online environment. You know, if I'm teaching in this environment, I'm asking my students every week, you know, how's this going? How's this, you know, what do you think about this? Because a lot of it, I will be doing it for the first time. So I would really be relying on student feedback on how the course is going from that perspective, and making sure that I was providing enough value to them. They're the ones paying for their education, right? I want to make sure that it's me that I'm providing enough value for them, just as they would in the traditional class. And then your second question about not comfortable with sharing, we absolutely deal with that as well. We have faculty who do not like to share materials, and that's fine. That's totally up to them when sharing with colleagues, and but encouraging those PLCs. But I think you have to have strong guidelines, as I mentioned in the presentation, and getting people in there to say, like, look, these are the materials that are okay for me. I want to show all of you. You're my department members. I want to share those materials. We also have guidelines that we say students can't record our faculty. Anybody. You know, you can't record without telling them that it's being recorded. And so we have guidelines in place so that students can't record materials or steal stuff from faculty and post them out on the internet for everybody to look at large. So I think having those guidelines in place to, one, encourage faculty to participate in sharing, but also if they're nervous about those materials getting out elsewhere, you know, providing ways that that's not going to happen.
Thank you, Jacob. I asked everyone if they can kindly fill the forms that I mean, like 10, 15 minutes ago I put, so we can get a survey of the performance of this session. I have 4 or 5 questions available. I don't know if you want to answer them or keep it to poll on next session. For example, how can we turn the training class such as engineering? So we have training classes, like field classes, okay? Engineering students work in field with a span of 3 months to be online training. I have another question. I can, hold on, how can I go back? For the assurance of learning, I think I just got a, yes, what about the assurance of learning? What do we need to consider when translating to online settings? Okay, these are the 2 like questions that I got.
Yeah, Paul, what are your thoughts?
Sure. Let me talk about the assurance of learning question in particular. We've had we launched an online program on purpose about 13 years ago. So we jumped into those waters a long time ago, and so we have over time kind of groped our way to deal with some of the issues that you've been talking about, including assessment of learning. We found that assessment of learning actually is not, at least from our point of view, is not. It's no more cumbersome, I guess, than it is for an on-the-ground course. From our perspective, we've developed rubrics and protocols for, you know, a large number of classes to collect, you know, sort of collect particular outcomes, assessment outcomes that are linked to particular learning objectives for the course. And if the metrics that we develop from those assessments are seen to be wanting, then we will work with the professors in charge of that particular course or group of professors who deliver that material to see how they can improve that evaluation. So it isn't terribly different than what it would be for an on-ground course. You're still collecting data on learning outcomes and trying to decide whether they are robust enough.
Yeah, and the only thing I would include is that it is about purposefully connecting it to the student objectives. In like a traditional course, a lot of times that just happens naturally, you're connecting them. But I think in an online environment, you have to be more purposeful to say, you know, this is the student objective we're addressing, here are the metrics that do it, you know, where it may be more natural in a traditional face-to-face course.
Mm-hmm.
field classes like banking, engineering sites. I mean, we have those kind of special type of classes. Any recommendation? Any how to deal with?
We at Northeastern, a big part of what we do is experiential learning. It is like going out and having the students experience those courses. And so we are working with corporate partners and those sorts of things to still have those experiences virtually through Microsoft Teams. So one example is, like if you were just supposed to go to a company and you were supposed to see everything that, was going on at that business, they recorded a session of going to that company and walking through and all the interactions that they would have. And then the students participated in a session while that was happening virtually. So you didn't have all the students going and participating in that live, but they were there online. But that is a difficult thing to recreate. But we take pride on being a university with a lot of experiential learning. And so we are trying to recreate those virtually.
Well, I guess that's it then. We don't have any. Let me for the last time. Yeah, I think we have. Yeah, Dr. Mona Hussein. Dr. Mona.
Yes, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you all so much for the presentation and the comments and the all your additions to this seminar. Actually, I just have a question for you, Mr. Jacob, about the regulations at your university. If you do have a very specific regulations regarding, for example, the exams and the final exams and the weights of that to your classes. My concern, and I think it's everybody else's concern, and Dr. Mohammed Zainal, he's aware of this, that Kuwait University, up until tomorrow, we have no regulations yet approved. The first draft is under revision, and tomorrow it will be approved. And once the regulation is there, I think everybody will be very happy, because both the rights of the students and the faculty members are stated very clearly there. Also, in my experience, since I have started for a couple of years, for a couple of weeks actually now, for virtual online teaching, I think it's very important that each and every faculty member have his own guidelines. I mean, we can find these guidelines all over the universities. They are available. They call them etiquette of online interactions or etiquette of chat rooms. You have general guidelines. I think these have to be very clearly stated for students so that the interaction will be at the level you are expecting. The only thing I found it was interesting, I think it should be maybe experimental so far, that students that they usually, the ones that are very shy in classes, I found them very proactive online. And I was very surprised, and the other way around. So it seems to me there is something going on there. Maybe because they are not, it's just, it's just their voice. But I found it's very interesting. The other thing, I am, of course, applying the Jigsaw to make sure I have pop-up quizzes to make sure that students are engaged and they are attentive, because this is our first experimental semester, and I want to make sure that everybody is on board with me. Of course, once we start the official teaching in August, everything should be, with the grades. The plan is to have grouping and exams, take-home exams grouping, because I'm not sure that today in Kuwait we have the internet and high-speed internet and broadband is like a civil right. So I'm afraid that my students will have some issues with the speed of the internet and issues with the quizzes and the exams. So that's my worry also. I'm also worried about, maybe this for Dr. Mohammed Zainal, that one of the articles in the regulation is that the final exam should be only 20 to 40%. And if it's online, maybe it can work around this, but if it's physical, I don't know, maybe the percentage should be a bit changed. And thank you so much. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. I think you're right on pace with like a lot of the ways of good quality online teaching. A lot of the things that you said here, and you mentioned that student. that is more proactive and interactive online than they are in person. I am that student. I'm very introverted by nature, and I'm very comfortable with technology. And so I am more comfortable, I think, in an online environment on discussion boards, on webinars than I am necessarily in person, just because that's my tendency and style. So it's interesting that you see that. And we have been seeing that in some of our classes as well. I think take-home exams are a good idea. We do that as well, where we have a window of time that students submit. They maybe have 24 hours to submit. So you can make those shorter, obviously, as Paul mentioned, with academic technology academic integrity concerns. But yeah, take-home exams, quizzes, you mentioned final exam guidelines. We do not tell faculty how much, what scheme they use for their courses, how much it is. So we leave it all up to them. We make some recommendations. I would think I think most of our faculty, the final exam, if they have one, is in that 20 to 40% range. I would say that that's the case, but we do not require. So I don't have anything from my office that says faculty have to have these schemes, or they can grade by points, they can grade by weights, they can grade by letter. It's totally up to them on how they do it. And we just have recommendations and suggestions. And then you mentioned transparency. I think that that's great with faculty guidelines. We've been encouraging that as well. Put all this information in your syllabus. If you want students to participate by chat this way, in our cases, if we require a webcam for a class, for the online proctoring or something like that, we want to include that in the syllabus at the front. So I agree that I think it's important to have transparency and set those guidelines by individual faculty outlining at the beginning of the semester in the syllabus. I hope I answered all of those questions.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much. And I just want to remind our colleagues that they can fill the questionnaire. And as for the question I'm getting to have these recorded session, yes, I will. I will send an email with the link, although it's going to be available on stream, but I'm still going to put it on a different channel, and I'll send the link to everyone participated in this, but not today, of course, maybe tomorrow or after tomorrow. Okay. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. Thank you. See you on Thursday, same time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.